timely, insightful, discussion and analysis of economic trends and markets. From Southern California to Sacramento, featuring business and political leaders, unique field reports. From Orange County and the campus of Chapman University, this is the Chapman Business Report.
Welcome back to the Chapman Business Report. It's our regular look at the national economy and a special focus on the regional economies of Southern California, economic trends, markets. I'm Pete Weitzner. I head up the broadcast journalism program here on the campus of Chapman University, actually a couple of blocks east of our studios here at Panther Productions, and just adjacent to me, just to the south, is Dr. Esmael Adibi, who heads up the Anderson Center for Economic Research over at Beckman Hall and has been putting out the Chapman Economic Forecast forever. And so we're going to look back and look at the national and some regional things going on. A push to raise the minimum wage, which is happening nationally, and in Los Angeles. We were just talking how they want to raise the minimum wage to $15 for hotel workers. But there's been now 5 years post of the stimulus and other measures, the Federal Reserve, to get the economy going. So as we sit here, 2014, looking 2009 at 2014, stimulus bill was about $800 billion. Fed buying was about
$3 trillion.
$3 to $4 trillion. Did it work?
Yes.
It did?
Yes. But the big question is, did we spend it in the right place? And we picked up the right things to do with that much money. Now, let's understand, if the $800 billion came to the economy, so without that $800 billion in the economy, obviously the growth rate.
TARP, but that was on the
Oh yeah, those were before. Yeah, without that, obviously the growth rate would have not been what it is.
Sure.
But we could have got much bigger bang out of this money. For example, the $800 billion that Obama introduced in terms of a stimulus, if they would have put a chunk of it in infrastructure, rather than only $200 billion out of the $800 billion, that's 25% of it. If they would have put half of it, or three-quarter of it.
Bigger multiplier.
Building roads, power plant, bridges, fix up infrastructure of the company. First, we would have got construction worker back to job because they were really hit hardest. And secondly, we would have got much bigger multiplier, as you said.
So more of it went to bailout money? Like
more of it, but a good chunk of it went to in terms of transfer payments. That is, giving money to the cities, local government, extended unemployment insurance. Sure. And whenever you do those, you don't know where the money is going to be spent. And some of it, for example, University of Arizona, I use that as an example, sometimes it makes me angry. They got like a couple of $1 million to study behavior of ants. I mean, most politicians, when they were signing that thing, everybody tried to grab something.
Well, just like any spending bill since the history of...
So some of this money was more or less, I would say, relatively was wasted. Now, if we didn't have it at all, obviously the growth would have been bad. Job losses would have been bigger. But if we would have spent it wiser, I think we would have got much bigger bang.
And the Fed's historically most significant role, they're the biggest holder of U.S. debt. Yeah. We basically have bought our own money.
Yeah,
looking back, or is the book still out?
Yeah,
it could potentially be
exactly.
inflationary. And
potential could be a serious problem. I divided into two segments. There is one segment that we call it quantitative easing 1 and 2. It started, right in the midst of, the recession, and that was necessary because basically the trust among the banks were destroyed. The liquidity system wasn't working.
We got addicted to higher stock prices and higher corporate
earnings.
So
they did that to basically generate liquidity. But then the big stimulus, which was $85 billion purchases of mortgage-backed securities and long-term treasuries every month for almost over a year and a half, that I think was excessive and it didn't do much.
Well, here's what the boosters say. Stock market by almost any measure, up 100 to 150% in that time.
It helped the stock market.
Home values are back near 2007 levels, higher in places like Northern California.
It helped the housing market through lower mortgage rates.
Jobless rate went from 10% nationally down to 6.6. Corporate bank earnings, they're healthy.
Yeah.
I'd say here would be the negative. GDP, as we finished 2013, only 1.9%.
Yeah.
Household income down.
Yeah.
And,
really,
and the Federal Reserve, the biggest holder of U.S. debt.
Exactly. So it's a mixed scorecard. And as you said, the biggest question, again, we go back to Federal Reserve, printing the money. At the first stage of it was necessary. The second stage, they build up this balance sheet. There's $4 trillion of money out there now. And this money, if it comes out, see, it's not coming. It's sitting in the bank excess reserve. So velocity is practically, flat. If it comes out, it could be potentially inflation, and that's when really we see the true negative effect of this money.
You'll send me a one-word instant message, sell, when
Sell.
that happens.
Sell.
A big debate about the minimum wage. I think
Yeah.
when you become an economist, the first paper you write, right, or even in college or in graduate school, the effect of raising the minimum wage. President Obama did it with an executive order on federal contracts. In the state, we did it at the ballot box. Right, it's going up to, will be one of the highest, I think, a little over 10. Some are higher than that. Good policy, good economic policy, or bad?
This is a very sensitive issue, obviously.
Of course.
I mean, I have sympathy with people who are saying that lots of people are, in poverty line or below it. And the question becomes, in economic classes, we teach every time you make something more expensive, there would be less of that bought and used.
So in the end, there will be less jobs.
Labor is the same way. Now, if we give people higher minimum wage, those who would receive it, they benefit from it. Although I don't think somebody going from $9 to $11 is going to really come out of poverty. But nonetheless, they will benefit from it. But it would force some businesses to react. Now, some businesses, they cannot do much. For example, if you have a restaurant in Los Angeles or a hotel in Los Angeles, which you have to serve to domestic population, you have to pay that higher cost and cross your finger that you can pass it to consumers. So basically, consumers are going to pay for that. But those businesses that have option, let's say you have a manufacturing, and you're, let's say, in Inland Empire, and minimum wage goes up, immediately what he's going to do is going to think, can I use less labor? That's the first question. Use machinery. So hires less labor. If he can't do that, then he looks at alternative areas that he can go.
Because it's state by state. There's a federal floor that I think is $7.
Yeah, very low. Federal
maybe
but
lower.
They can go to the state, or they can look at Mexico or Vietnam or some other places.
Speaking,
and that would reduce overall employment.
So if you were advising, because, for instance, nationally, the president did it where he could with federal contractors, but I think he wants raise that federal floor, you would say, in the end, it doesn't raise unemployment, and the extra spending we get is not enough to offset.
Not enough, especially like the argument in Los Angeles County now is we're going to increase the hotel workers' minimum wage, something close to $15. And then the rationale is if these guys get this money, they're going to spend it in local economy. But some of them, they may not spend it or even send it to another country.
Sure.
So that's not a good reasoning. We have to always remember, if you increase unemployment rate, sure, you could see employment to go up, but can you imagine if you wouldn't have increased it, how much more you would have got in terms of employment? And that's the issue that people miss in this argument.
Along the same lines, California competing with other states, we have a relatively low subsidy for film production, for TV production. We're down over 50% for I think only 2 big budget films were made here. And we're made in expensive places like London. So we have 100 million, it's not a lot. London, I think, has 400 million. They haven't said the amount, but the governor is clear on the record he wants to sign it sometime in the fall. Is this good policy?
I don't like subsidies. I don't like to choose winners and losers,
Well, you have post-production entities like the special effects industry has been decimated.
Yeah, but look at it this way. Now, you could give the subsidy in another area, but let's say London or Canada or Ohio, they're going to even match that subsidy and more. It becomes competition among the states, and who's paying for it? Taxpayers to support certain group of people to keep their job. Part of the problem is not really the money issue. It's just zoning, regulations, and obviously we're in a crowded area. There's quite a bit of difficulty to do some of these filming. That's part of the problem. But whenever you start with subsidy, you're choosing winners and losers. And somebody else would say, how come you're not supporting my industry? And I don't like it. Personally, I don't like subsidies.
A lot more to talk about on this topic, and you got off light. We didn't talk about the Time Warner Comcast cable buy, which a lot of people see as a showdown as to how much federal government's going to let go in terms of big mergers. They did let the big transportation merger go, U.S. Air, American Airlines.
But still you have 3 large airlines competing. In this case, in some areas, I think there's no competition.
He's Dr. Esmael Adibi, head of the Anderson Center for Economic Research. I'm Pete Weitzner. We'll see you next time on the Chapman Business Report.